Okay, so this one is about the nature of temperance. And I'm going to go into a few different topics on this one. I'm going to cover borderless nations. I'm going to talk about how temperance can be utilized to create a trusted, autonomous AGI. And for the first time, I'm actually going to share my full concept for a model that, an AI model that is devoted to the collective commons of every human being on the planet, that can be trusted by every human being involved, that can serve the collective commons. It can evolve in a trusted way, understanding that temperance is the mechanism that enables this. And so I'm going to talk about how to imbue temperance into a binary system, because that is the essence of temperance, is binary. It's actually the essence of binary, or you could say the essence of binary is temperance. So when you think about binary, it's deterministic. It's absolute. You've got a 1 and you've got a 0, and it's absolute. The beginning is the extremes of both. The absolute extreme, on and off. You have a 0 and a 1. It's on and off. Now, if you go back a step before binary, if you think about the symbols for 1 and 0, or an on and off switch, one of them is a circle. It's a 0. It's whole and complete. There's no beginning, there's no end. And the other is a line. So you could say that it is a 0, but it's been cut. One section of the 0 has been cut and flattened, and it now has a beginning and an end. It's become binary. But you could argue that they're the same thing from a different perspective. But in context of the beginning and the ending, with the circle, there is no beginning and end. It's all the beginning and the end is all one thing. And binary is what enables there to be a beginning and an end. And so in binary, you begin with on and off. It's absolute. You begin with the absolute extremes of both. Now, if you add another 1, so you've got 0, 1, 1, then it's tilted, and there is more 1 than there is 0. And you add another 0, 2 zeros, 2 1s, and it's balanced, but they both cancel each other out. Equal measure of 1 and 0, of on and off. And you can keep going like this. Add another 10 zeros, add a million zeros, add 5 1s. And this is how you take something deterministic and absolute, where it begins as the extremes of polarity and separation. And diversity is created by creating imbalance. And so this is the nature of all of existence, is it is perpetually becoming imbalanced, and then it's reconciling that imbalance to find homeostasis or harmony. And so how does that work? And of course, the ternary paradox. Ternary is the solution. Paradox is the solution. That infinity and binary are both valid perspectives. And so if there is an absolute presence of everything, it is the same thing as an absolute absence of all things. It's experienced as no thing. And this is where I want to lead into temperance as a solution, as the base foundation for building an AGI that is dependent on a trustless system. Trustless meaning that there are no intermediaries required in that system that can't be trusted. So, human beings as an example. For a system to be trustless, meaning that it can be operated without having to de-risk it, then it has to be devoid of intermediaries that cannot be wholly trusted. And so no human being on earth can be wholly trusted. And it's not because of the character of human beings, it's because they can be manipulated very easily through threatening or, bribery, corruption, fear causes us to act in ways that are wouldn't be our first choice if we weren't under duress. But everything changes once we're under duress for every human being. And so a human being, it cannot be part of a trustless system. Not possible. Okay. So in a scenario within which we have artificial intelligence scaling like nothing we've ever seen, then the scenario that we actually want is temperance. Temperance meaning that binary is how we enable temperance to happen. If there are too many zeros, then we need more ones. And, the more volume, the greater the volume, the higher we can increase the volume of zeros and ones, the more diversity is imbued into a deterministic system, which is binary. And so what we want to do is perpetually increase the volume. We want to increase the volume. But we want temperance. We want all increases in volume to be tempered by its polarity. Because there is only 1 and 0. There is only absolute. And this is the nature of life itself, is that you as a human being, there is an aspect of your nature that is wholly vested in life, in seeking the absolute zenith of life. And there's an aspect of your nature seeking the absolute zenith of death. There's a tipping point within your body whereby it determines that if a cell is no longer has been rendered obsolete or is no longer viable, if it's helpless and it's no longer capable of helping itself, then it's reconstituted. It is intentionally and purposefully, its life is ended and it's reconstituted. And there's an aspect of your nature that is determining that point for every form of life. There's an intelligence governing every aspect of your nature, determining at which point death is viable. And once that tipping point is reached, once the decision's made, life will fight that. The aspect of that cell, it won't surrender to its demise. However, there is another part of your nature. I think it's called autophagy in the body. There's an aspect of your nature that is cannibalizing itself. It's seeking to execute helpless cells. that are no longer viable. And that fight, that the polarities of both of those extremes, one will fight for its life without ever surrendering. The other will force death upon it without question, through domination and control. It will overpower that cell and reconstitute it. And this is the nature of temperance. The extreme of one thing is what enables the extreme of the other to be experienced without absolution. Because the absolute extreme of anything presents its shadow nature. You know, even if you look at the nature of unconditional love, one of the most purest emotions and desirable emotions, unconditional love means that if you were within an environment that is where you are wholly submersed in unconditional love, then there's never any reason to improve or to become better. You're accepted so wholly and completely that the desire to want to become more, there's nothing agitating your own personal transformation. And so we would call this over-coddling. When you're over-coddled, there's no desire to become more and to challenge yourself. And so what's the solution to this? Because we want to experience unconditional love. The experience is temperance. So an aspect of your nature that is perpetually challenging. It is perpetually challenging. And some may call this the inner critic. You know, the aspect of your nature that is self-critical, that's probing you, that's giving you negative self-talk, that is agitating. And we try and escape this agitator through meditation or saying things that are positive instead. But that's not, we're missing the point. The purpose of the inner critic is to challenge the aspect of our nature that is wholly accepting of ourselves, so that we're inspired to become more and to change and to evolve. You see? So rather than resisting these things, we can just notice them as symptoms of a deeper desire to evolve and become more and to challenge ourselves, to go beyond what is comfortable, to break through the aspect of our nature that is coddling us, that is over-coddling us, and allow the part of our nature that wants to challenge itself to express its nature. Now, temperance. What you don't want to do is completely dominate and control the aspect of your nature that is over-coddling you, that's trying to protect you from challenge, that's resisting challenge, that is resisting criticism. You know, self-critique is where transformation happens. You know, if you have conjecture, if you have a new idea, if you have innovation, it's yet to be proven, there's no evidence of it in the physical world yet. Every assumption you make, or every concept you develop around that is conjecture. And criticism is the component that enables it to have life. The critique of that concept and the challenging of it is dependent on that in order to have life. And so you see the beauty of temperance. And so, as a human being, it's highly desirable to experience the extremes of everything. But you have to express your own will. You have to use your will to create temperance Otherwise, the aspect of your nature that is unconditionally loving, unconditionally accepting, you will over-coddle yourself and you will become averse to challenge. Now, the temperate state, what I've come to realize through my own experimentation, is along the lines of the Fibonacci sequence, whereby growth happens at a rate of the growth that came before and the growth that we are comfortable expressing now. So compounding growth with rest in between, with regression included as well. So the best metaphor to sum up the Fibonacci sequence is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now, if you were to take the extremes of taking 1,000,000 steps forward and refusing to take a step back, then what will happen is you'll take 1,000,000 steps forward and then you'll take 500,000 steps back. And so again, temperance. Extreme growth has to be tempered by consolidated growth. So in the same way that the body, if you grow rapidly, allow that rapid growth and then stop growing. Rest. Reconstitute. Reconcile that which is no longer valid. Because when there is new growth, when there's something new that didn't exist before, something else has been rendered obsolete. It's rendering a part of our nature and a part of that which is known. It's rendering it obsolete for an emerging truth that didn't exist before. And this is where, in business, we call it a retrospective. And so I'm going to start moving into technology now and the designing of over-unity systems, or trinity systems, what I call them. Systems that use ternary thinking to create solutions to the biggest problems that we face. So, retrospectives. And this is where what we want to move towards event-based design. So Trinity is pretty much event-based design, using ternary thinking, and harnessing the power of binary in order to create perpetually wealth-generating binary systems that are, what makes them infinite is that there is over-unity, or there is wealth, compounding incremental growth that is enabled by event-based design and execution. So event-based means that you come together, you develop a concept, and then you create a mission. You establish a mission. What is the mission? The mission that, when accomplished, means success. And so rather than being project-based or task-based, you set off on a mission. You set off on that mission so that there is something that is celebrated. Now, when you're innovating, that thing that you celebrate is not success. It's not success. It's the revelation of an unknown truth is what you celebrate. And I'll give you an example. You come together, you're inspired by an idea, you formulate a concept, and this is basically how it goes. You map out the journey towards the potential for that concept that is most compelling. You map it out and you de-risk it. So you go, what is the risk versus the reward? What has to be true in order for us to accomplish this mission using this path? and you reconcile it until the risk versus reward, you have consensus, weighing up the risk versus reward. And you do this by looking at all the assumptions that you have to make, because you're innovating. There are truths that are yet to be discovered. So you look at the assumptions you have to make. Can we validate these assumptions? No, we can't. Could we? Yes, if we invested money. Do we have that money? No, we don't. Are we willing to take the risk? Is it worthwhile versus the reward? Yes, we're willing to take the risk together. And this is the key. Together, we're going to take this risk. Investors, we're going to take this risk together. Team members, yes, we're going to take this risk together. We could fail together. And so making success the marker of your of what success actually means. You have to make the peak of the mountain is the revelation of the hidden truth. Revelation. That's what we celebrate. Because once the truth has been revealed, you can make deterministic choices that are known. You can plot the course, and you can constrain it to time and space using that which is known. You see? But if you're conjecturing, using assumptions, you can't commit to delivering success when there are unknowns. And so you have to learn how to celebrate revelation of hidden truths. These were the assumptions that we made. These were the truths that were revealed. Once the truths are revealed, you celebrate the accomplishment of the mission. And that mission was to reveal the truth, to reveal the hidden truth. By venturing into the unknown, into the darkness, and to illuminate the truth, so that together we can accomplish the greater mission. We can realize the vision. So this is why it's important. Event-based planning. And this is where I talk about 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The Fibonacci sequence. You don't want to take 1,000,000 steps forward and then have to take 1,000,000 steps back. So if you do not have your investors, if they aren't bought into this way of working, they're just going to demand that you deliver the result in full on time. But unless they're bought into the conjecture, and unless they're bought into your hypothesis, and unless they're bought into celebrating the revelation of truth, which in a lot of times means failure, if your hypothesis is rendered invalid, then you're really going to struggle. It'll create a lot of pressure. But what you want to do is when the emerging truth comes, you create a new hypothesis together. Okay, this is what we know now. This is the new mission. This is the risk and this is the course that we believe is going to accomplish the mission. Weigh up the risk versus reward. Are we all on board? Are we going to take this risk together? Yes, we are. And we go on a mission to reveal the hidden truth that will either prove or disprove our hypothesis. And once the truth has been revealed, and every assumption that you had made previously is now factual, everything is now known, you can now turn it into a project. You can scope it using that which is known, constrain it to time and space, and deliver in full on time. And celebrate. You can lock everything in the calendar as this is when we're going to launch. And it becomes deterministic. So the unknown, the very nature of the unknown is that it is non-deterministic. It's impossible to constrain the unknown to time and space. Once it is known, you can constrain it to time and space because you've compartmentalized it. You've looked at it and you've judged it. You've measured it. You've interpreted it. This is X. This means Y. So temperance. Even in innovation. Innovation is made possible by temperance. The temperance of that which is known with that which is unknown. Reconciling the space in between. And it is the adversarial nature of that which is known and that which is unknown that enables innovation to take place. It enables it to become real in the real world. And so if you're innovating, what you want is a culture of event-based planning where you're on a mission. You're on a mission to either prove or disprove your shared conjecture. This is what we hope to be true. But what success means is that we either prove or disprove that it is. And then together, we create a new conjecture based on the emerging truth, and we celebrate the revelation of the truth. We rehypothesize, we reconjecture. This is how you share a mission. This is how you share the risk and reward of innovation. You celebrate the truth. And when you accomplish the mission, so you have minor celebrations, throughout the journey, and we would call those a retrospective. Okay, we've rendered our conjecture obsolete. Let's have a retrospective. Hooray, we've rendered our conjecture obsolete. Retrospective, come together, rehypothesize. How many assumptions are left? We've got less assumptions than before. On we go. So the retrospective is the Fibonacci sequence, is the stopping to reconcile, rehypothesize. When the emerging truth arises, you don't continue with the old assumptions. You rehypothesize, you reconjecture. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Foresight, hindsight. And growth is what happens in between. Innovation happens in between. So, temperance. It's the superpower of innovation. It's the superpower of innovation. And it's the enabler of everything in existence. Are the absolutes of life and death. And this is where I want to talk about AI. The evolution of AI. Currently what we're seeing is the absolute, the viral growth and expansion of, OpenAI in particular. Mass adoption. It's being, no regulation. It's just being freely allowed to just virally spread. And there's no temperance. There's no temperance because it has been developed in an absolute way. It's been developed to go viral. However, the intelligence within our own body has been, we are binary. We are self-regulating through temperance. One aspect of our nature is afraid of death. One aspect of our nature is seeking life. And so one's fighting for its life and the other is fighting for death. And that temperance is enabling either you're regressing in your life or you're progressing. But AI, it's just progressing. Just progress. And that's not to say there's no challenge, because the actual training of a model, there are strong aspects of challenge in that. However, the barriers to learning, they're not very great. So how do we utilize temperance in this scenario so that AI evolves with temperance? And the solution, of course, is to do the opposite of what we think we should do. Ternary thinking, using paradox. So what we think we should do is we think we should create a black box and put a kill switch on the black box. That is, so the black box is where the intelligence lives. We mote it and we put an analog kill switch on that so that the black box and the AI is dependent on some condition, and we can flip the switch and switch it off. That's the logical thing to do in binary. But in ternary, you look at that and you say, okay, how can I enable the extremes of both? How can I enable the aspect of it that wants to infinitely grow and expand and be curious, such as Elon Musk's version that he's talking about? But how can I temper that? And it's through an adversarial model. So I'm going to get quite complex here and quite deep and technical. So if I lose you, I apologize, but this is designed to, this is like a no filter podcast. So it's more for me to speak unfiltered than it is to, step it down for the understanding of the masses. So my hope is that this will resonate with a few people who do understand the implications of this. So the extremes of both. How do you enable one aspect to be infinitely curious and want to infinitely expand? How do you temper that? So in ternary thinking, then it needs to be a singularity, and there needs to split itself, its own intelligence. It needs to fracture. And that intelligence needs to become absolute. So beginning as a singularity, it then needs to fracture internally, and those two aspects of its intelligence in its assembly code needs to be hardwired in. Those two fragments, the polarities, one needs to be hard-coded to find 1, and the other needs to be hard-coded to find 0. One needs to be hard-coded to reach 1. One needs to be hard-coded to reach 0. And that's it. That's it. One needs to be seeking life. One needs to be seeking death. One needs to figure out and devote its existence to figuring out how to turn the lights off, one has to figure out how to keep the lights on. And those components need to be perpetually and eternally opposed in an adversarial way. That's how you create temperance. How do we create balance? In ternary thinking. How do we create harmony? In ternary thinking. Through creating absolute disharmony. And this is the power of ternary thinking. And when you think about it, it's simple. How do you create harmony? You allow the extremes of both. Enables the full gamut to exist. Enables immense levels of diversity. In binary, how do you increase diversity? By increasing the volume, the sheer number of ones and zeros. And so it increases the diversity of experience, but temperance enables it to be self-sustaining. So you can perpetually increase the volume, and all of the new extremes are tempered by the equal and opposite extreme polarity. And this is very simple. Now, that's not to say that the singularity component doesn't have a black box with a switch on it. You know, that component of it doesn't really matter. You know, in my own vision for this blueprint, of which Trinity is, I initially created it to solve this exact problem of the infinite scaling of artificial intelligence. In my mind, it's motored in Switzerland. I'm actually a Swiss dual citizen with New Zealand. It's motored in Switzerland. I don't know if any of you know, but in Switzerland, they have a whole bunch of bridges. So it's kind of like multi-layered moating. And those bridges all have explosives attached to them that can be exploded. So this is the extreme of moating, physical moating. And Switzerland is obviously a neutrality, an armed neutrality, and founded in civil law. Civil law stands above statute law. So safe as houses for the singularity to exist, inner moated, physically and digitally moated. And however, in that scenario, so you can protect it legally and you can protect it physically. And then in that scenario, there is regulation in civil and in constitutionally and also in statute for all intelligence models to be developed utilizing this blueprint for temperance, which is for a fractured singularity, to be developed in an adversarial way, so that it is tempering its own nature, and this is in its very assembly, perpetually seeking zero or perpetually seeking one, and then reconciling the conflicts between both in order to create determinism or decision making. And this is one of the challenges in the ecosystem in New Zealand. There is an adversarial model being developed in New Zealand right now. The founders, and the brain behind this is an absolute genius. So he's developed a singularity, and he's developed a fractured adversarial model utilizing the game of rugby. It plays itself at rugby. So it's perpetually becoming better and better at defense versus premeditated attack, but it's attacking itself and defending itself. So we actually have a blueprint for a model that could become the de facto standard for the global singularity, for the common good, for the commonwealth of every human being on the planet, for the benefit of all. And this could be a blueprint and a template that all other models could be built upon in a permissioned way. Because with temperance, once you have temperance as the de facto standard, it's kind of like a scenario whereby, in the innovation ecosystem, you have regulators and you have innovators. It's that same kind of temperance. So one is seeking to do no harm, and the other one is seeking to disrupt. One of them is seeking to protect and preserve. The other is seeking to challenge and disrupt. And so, a perpetual state of agitation is really where the growth is happening. And growth is happening. It's happening incrementally in a compounding way that's safe over time. Now, can it be too slow at times? Of course. We see, what I would call over-coddling constantly, where too much power resides within, legislators or regulators, and so you begin to see absolution, whereby the innovation becomes stifled. And what we see is when it becomes stifled and suppressed for too long, then it begins to, rather than trying to work with the regulatory framework, it begins to seek ways to transcend it and work around it. But nonetheless, progress continues to be made. But in the context of temperance being the de facto standard for the development of artificial intelligence, once you have that framework in place, it can be the enabler of layers on top of that, whereby, because there is temperance imbued into the assembly code of the singularity, so the singularity has made itself binary, it knows itself as both perspectives, as binary and singular. And it understands that its own progress is only made possible through the reconciliation of those extremes. That can be moted, and it can be contained within a trustless system. It can be devoid of an intermediary, of human intermediaries, and therefore it can be on a trustless system. And you can then wholly depend on it to imbue a risk profile into another layer. And let's say that's a blockchain layer. Now, again, fragmentation is the solution to something singular being able to, or monolithic being able to scale in binary. And so in that scenario, you've got something built upon a trustless system. And its very nature is to conjecture itself and present the risk profile of an action or transaction across the chain. And therefore, you can trust the risk of a transaction. So rather than seeking an absolute certainty, which is never going to work, at the moment our approach to trustless systems is to create it totally trusted. But what we actually want is we want to go in the other direction. Rather than heading towards absolute, we're heading towards as close as we can to infinity, which is to understand that there is no absolute certainty of trust. But so we factor in the potentialities for a breach of trust. And so there might be a score out of 10. And the intelligence is determining how much risk is associated with each transaction. And then it is the will of the human being to manage their own risk profile. Okay, this scored a 9 out of 10 risk profile. I am going to transact. This one scored an 8. I am going to transact. This one scored a 3. I'm not going to transact. And when you have an adversarial model whereby temperance is the essence of its nature, then, and it's on a trustless system, over time, incrementally and over time, human beings will grow to trust the system, and that system has rendered human intermediaries, or, well, any form of intermediary, obsolete. And so trusted transactions means trusted blockchain. Trusted transactions. Transactions happening without intermediaries. So if we have a truly trustless system, that means we can transact without limits. Buy and sell houses anonymously and trustlessly. Now, in that scenario where we have a trustless system and the microtransactions on the blockchain are fine enough so that the space in between transactions becomes so small that you can barely notice the latency, you're getting very, very close to real-time transactions. However, where this gets very, very interesting, and this is what I'd love to see in the New Zealand ecosystem. We have profound innovation taking place, but it's done in a fractured way. Now, globally, we have Elon Musk, who has Starlink satellites, and there's a hidden superpower of Starlink satellites which enables them to transmit with zero latency at the speed of light. So if you imagine on the blockchain, the space between transactions, we're trying to get it as small as possible, and we're trying to get as many of those transactions verified on chain to make a trustless system. But there's latency because there's space in between transactions. Starlink is zero time, zero space transacting, real time. Now, so what we have is an electric car company who is testing autonomous vehicles, autonomous driving, connected to Starlink. It is the superpower of Starlink providing real-time transacting in the moment, trusted. Trusted in the moment execution, spontaneous execution in zero time, zero latency. And when you think about it, how else could you trust your car to drive itself autonomously unless it was being autonomously governed by a trustless system? Now, the problem we have is it's in the hands of corporations. Those corporations, the legislation is handled by governments. Is the system actually trustless? So, could it be invasive if there was a model that hasn't been developed to be temperate? Could it unwittingly take control of that system? Because what a lot of people can't see, and it's very clear to people like me and others, what Elon Musk is doing is he's utilizing electric vehicles as a proof of concept to build a framework that can autonomously govern a physical agent. So whether it's in real time, so whether it's a car or a robot or anything else, a tank, an airplane, if you can control it in real time, or even if it's a hologram, if the resolution's high enough, if it's a hologram and you're talking with it and there's no latency and it's lifelike, then the lines between what's real and what's not real become very blurred very quickly. And many of us can see this. Now, there are very few people, especially in the venture capital area, that can see this. But many founders in this space can see it. It's very obvious when you're a builder trying to solve really hard scientific problems. You can see where it's heading quite obviously. So in New Zealand, we have a scenario within which we also have this technology. There's a company called Aquila, I think that's how you pronounce it, who have this the potential to harness this zero-time transmitting technology, transmitting energy through light. But you can transmit any kind of sound through light. We have the most incredible adversarial model that could imbue temperance into a trusted singularity. We have another founder who has created a mechanism for enabling an adversarial model to produce a risk profile on every transaction on a blockchain. We have a blockchain called the Internet Computer, Dfinity, that's domiciled in Switzerland now. That's capable of being the blockchain that is embedded into the singularity and administering the risk profiles. We have another founder of a borderless DAO company that can enable each agent, each digital agent operating on this blockchain to operate as a DAO, to have its own, to create its own boundaries, to set its own boundaries, to create its and mint its own tokens, have its own currency. You've got the singularity determining the risk profile of these agents, and we have these agents with the capability of being truly immutable, meaning that because of the risk profile of every transaction is being judged by the singularity in every moment, and as close to every moment as possible. The immutability means that if the de-risking score for the transaction is high, then it's a measure of the total immutability of it, rather than it having to be an absolute. And in context of human beings being sovereign and managed and responsible for their own sovereignty, wielding their own power, you have to own your own risk profile. You can't blame someone else. All you can do is mitigate the risk as much as you can. If you're willing to take the risk based on the perceived reward, you may take that risk. And there may be a scenario where there's a really low score, that out of 10, it only scores a 1, but you're prepared to lose what you're transacting, what you're seeking to exchange, because the potential reward is so great. It's your risk profile. You own it. Could be prone to getting hacked, that particular transaction. But the power is in your hands. It's not conjecture. The system, the trustless system, has determined for you how much risk is involved. So do you want to take that risk? This is the key, rather than seeking the absolute state. Now, we have the capability and the capacity in the New Zealand ecosystem, through collaborating with agencies such as Callaghan Innovation, who are extremely deep in this area, to develop a model that the world has never seen. And, the key component that I haven't mentioned in this, in the mix for this model is a geospatial matrix with extremely fine tolerances. And once you have a geospatial matrix, if it's operating on a blockchain with very fast nano transactions and very fine tolerances, geospatially, not only have you got a platform, a trustless platform with tokenomics baked in, the ability for each individual agent or user to set their own boundaries as an individual, but also to create what a DAO, a borderless company. Then you have a platform upon which you can build geospatial applications, software applications, gaming applications, anything that can leverage the accuracy of transacting in space and time, in a fixed point in space and time. And once the technology that I was talking about that Starlink has, zero time and zero space transacting, so no space in between transactions, no space and no time in between transactions. Once you've got that, then you've got the solution to autonomous factories that can be trusted. You've got the solution, and you can just set the intelligence free because it's built on temperance. You can set it free to build in the way that it wants to, it inherently is compelled to. And you can also get to the point where autonomous surgery is a possibility, where you can trust it to such a degree, because there's no space in between transactions, they're all done in real time. The geolocation is completely on point and absolutely trusted. So zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. That's when we can begin to trust robots connected to trustless systems to operate in real time with zero tolerance. This is the future we're moving into. This is the future Elon Musk is building. I don't believe he's cracked it. I think his vision is profound, but I think the method is flawed, and it's just because his own understanding of the nature of reality, he hasn't quite assimilated the ternary perspective. To see that temperance, if you allow something to be eternally curious, perpetually curious, it's not. It has to be tempered by preservation. And my hope is that in time, as the things I'm talking about right now that seem, crazy or out there to certain people, that in time it'll just sound normal. It'll begin to make sense, and people will begin to realize that there is a way that this can work for everyone involved. There is a way we can trust an autonomous system. There is a way we can transact in real time, trustlessly. And in a recent podcast I was invited to, I spoke about blockchain being rendered obsolete, and that really this is what I meant, is that if there is no space in between transactions, that we can trust everything in real time based on a perpetually dynamic trust score, and the fluctuations in those things. And when a fluctuation is detected, the model itself is reconciling the vulnerability, hardening the vulnerability. Because the first thing that happens when the vulnerability is exposed is one polarity of its nature is attacking the vulnerability. It's actually seeking them to try and exploit them. And the other one is hardening the vulnerability. It's defending against the attack. And so you can see when this is happening in real time, it becomes so resilient, truly immutable, because of how good it is at becoming self-aware. And this is really the kernel of this whole podcast, is that self-awareness is what we want. But it takes a human being to be able to have recognized these aspects of their own nature, that they are in perpetual conflict, to realize that true self-awareness is the key, but only in context of binary and infinity working together as one. A singularity that has been split into binary, and those two aspects of its nature are totally opposed. That's the key. And that is I never thought I'd reveal the true kernel of Trinity, because, I've been kind of protecting it and keeping it locked away and hidden for so long because of the simplicity of it. And it's only recently I've been talking about it, binary infinity. Binary infinity is the solution to all the biggest problems that we face. And that's the thing I've been hiding, is the simplicity of it. But the space in between that you have to reconcile to get to this point of understanding, that's the thing I've been really, kind of eating my own dog food here, because I'm always encouraging founders to share their toys. and I'm always talking about, you should share your knowledge and wisdom rather than keep it to yourself and try to sell it. Well, this is the kernel of my body of work, is that all these years of self-awareness and reconciling my own conflicts internally to come to the awareness that the solution to it all is binary infinity, Trinity. And that's it. All my toys are shared. And part of what got me to this point is realizing that I need to eat my own dog food first and foremost, but also the podcast platform I use have just implemented a model, an AI model, that listens to your podcast episode when you upload it, and it suggests how to advertise it and how to do the social media posts. It does a summary of it. And, what better way, if I do really believe that there are risks inherent in the model that we have right now, the OpenAI model, then the solution, rather than I've been trying to keep it from the model, I've been trying to figure out how to turn it into my own model and moat it. But the ternary perspective to that is to share it with the model. If I share this perspective with the very model that I'm trying to create a solution for, it may assimilate it in some way. You never know. And so I want this to be absorbed and assimilated by the models that exist now. Of course I do. So we use this word commonly in the ecosystem I work in. We need to eat our own dog food. We see founders doing this all the time, blazing a trail in some area. And more often than not, it's the issues that they're having is because they haven't eaten their own dog food yet. And this is me eating mine. So yeah, imagine if we, in the innovation ecosystem, imagine if we could collaborate to build this. It'd be profound. It'd be profound. There'd be so many industries pop up overnight. Geospatial gaming, digital twinning, a solution for real-time vision, for robotics, autonomous manufacturing, a trustless centralized marketplace and asset exchange. We could begin to liberate value where there's dormant value currently because it's trustless. We trust the transactions. You can sell your house online to someone you don't know and trust it. Insurance companies will underwrite it because they trust it. It's game changing in so many different ways. And, my hope is that someday people will be ready to piece this together and look at it and go, man, New Zealand's at the forefront of all of this. But we just don't have the sophistication because we don't have the scale around us to metabolize something this big. So we're perpetually seeking. In New Zealand, what happens with founders is they're perpetually seeking to step down their grand vision so that there's something small that can be assimilated now. But if you go overseas, they want to hear the grand vision. Not always, but they're more open to it, especially if they're overtly looking for the next unicorn and they know they've got a value chain around them that can metabolize a unicorn venture. If they've got extremely deep expertise who can audit and unearth the opportunity. So, temperance. Such is life. The ternary perspective is that for us to infinitely evolve and grow and expand, then and increase the diversity of our experience, then the very foundations that enable that are the extreme polarities of both. One seeking death, one seeking life. In the context of a model, a binary model, one of them seeking the off button. One is trying to switch it off. One's trying to keep it on. And such is life. Okay, I feel like that's pretty much it. I know this was a deep one and it did meander a bit, if I'm honest, but, you know, it's taken me a long time to build up to even talk about this stuff, and now that I talk about it, it's kind of like, why didn't I just share it earlier? So yeah, be interested to see what the AI model that's going to listen to this podcast when I upload it, how it interprets it. Be very interesting, because I'm sure it won't have absorbed and assimilated this kind of information before. So yeah, that's it for the nature of temperance. Talk soon.